And joining me now, I'm pleased to see, is Michael Oren, the former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Great to see you. Thank you very much. Let's talk about this visit, because it's going to really set the table for what comes next at a pivotal time. You know this better than I. When he talks about expanding the map, he's talking about Saudi recognition. He's talking about the ambition that Donald Trump first laid out on the Abraham Accords to really have the Arab world at peace with Israel. But that won't happen if he yields to his right-wing ministers and takes Palestinian lands from the West Bank, takes them all over, something that they want and which the Saudis would never agree to. Am I right?
Whoa. Well, first of all, it's a great pleasure and always a tremendous honor to be with you, Andrea. Thank you. Thank you for hosting me. This is an historic meeting. First of all, it's the first meeting with a foreign leader in the White House of the Trump presidency, and there's a significance in that. There's a message in that to the Middle East, to the world, and it's a very important message. Beyond that, a very full deck, a very full table of issues that begin with Gaza, the second phase of the ceasefire, which is a very difficult phase for this prime minister and his government, because basically it means that Hamas survives. Hamas will continue to control large parts of Gaza, parts that are not being controlled by the Israeli military. Hopefully Israel will get the hostages back. We can't assume that Hamas is giving back all the hostages. It may save a few, and I don't mean this cynically, but for a rainy day. Hamas is liable to say, hey, we don't know where they are. And then beyond that, as you mentioned before, the Saudi-Israel peace deal, which is on the table, there may be a price to pay for that in terms of discussing in some way what the Saudis call a pathway to a Palestinian state, which is a good term, pathway. It's the P word. It doesn't really mean you're actually discussing a Palestinian state. You're discussing that pathway, but still that's a very heavy lift for many members of the prime minister's coalition. Prime minister could come back to them and say, what can I do? The president is demanding this, and if we do agree to discuss that pathway, we can get peace with Saudi Arabia, which means peace with the entire Sunni world. It means peace with Indonesia, Malaysia, potentially even Pakistan. But, Andrew, I think the big issue along the line will be Iran, that we cannot talk about eliminating the threat of Hamas, eliminating the threat of Hezbollah in the north, without dealing as what they call in the Middle East the head of the snake or the head of the octopus. That has to be resolved. And I think that reaching an understanding with this White House, with Israel, would be a truly game-changing outcome for this meeting.
And in fact, there's new reporting today, the New York Times reporting, that something that I've been told U.S. officials have long suspected, that Iran, we knew they were a week, days away from having enough nuclear material, nuclear fuel for a weapon, but not the weapon itself. They hadn't done the miniaturization, they hadn't gotten the delivery system, but that they are now looking at a shortcut, technically, to be able to have the weapon itself in less than a year, less than the lead time. So does that give more impetus to the argument that Netanyahu can make?
It certainly does. Well,
to go after Iran, and importantly, they've eliminated most of Iran's air defenses in that strike, the retaliatory Israeli strike. So they're in a much better position now militarily to do it.
Well, I would go as far as to say, yes, it's a very significant development. I noticed, and certainly raises the whole question of whether action is necessary on the part of Israel or together with the United States to prevent Iran from breaking out and creating a nuclear weapon. I think that the Iranians, and I'm going out on a limb a bit here, bear with me, that they are also transactional in the way that the president is transactional. And that this move is meant to indicate to the White House that they're opening to negotiations, and I think that this president would prefer to negotiate and not to engage in a kinetic action against Iran. But he wants to engage in negotiations in a way that is fundamentally different than the path of both the Biden and Obama administrations which was to incentivize the Iranians to come to the negotiating table. I think that this president would like to see the Iranians come to the table begging for a deal. And so right now, I think this move is part of a message to the White House that we in Tehran are willing to ratchet up the pressure on you to negotiate. We see what happens. There's always the law of unintended consequences. When you get very, very close to a weapon that would threaten not just Israel and the entire Middle East, but the world and the United States, people may take action.